Meow! Pause your scrolling. Are you actually working right now or just clicking spreadsheets to look busy? Yeah, I thought so. Watch this video before your boss realizes your entire job.
Okay, I want to start with a question. And look, it might feel a little prickly. What do you actually do all day? And no, I don't mean your job title. I mean, what do you genuinely, make? Or what do you contribute? I mean, if you're a builder, it's easy, right? You build houses. Simple. But if you work in the corporate world, that question can get surprisingly tricky, can it? So today we're going to try and unravel this whole mystery of pointless work. Here's the plan. We'll start with the big paradox at the center of it all. Then we're going to take a pretty wild detour through a surprising historical parallel. After that, I'll show you a 5-part framework that I promise you will completely change how you see the modern office. We'll get into why these jobs even exist in the first place. And of course, the big one. Is there any way out? All right, so let's just dive right in, shall we? I mean, think about it. We're constantly told we live in this age of ruthless efficiency, right? Maximum productivity. So why do so many of us feel like our jobs are, well, fundamentally useless? It doesn't add up. How can both of those things be true at the same time? Just really think about it for a second. If you're a baker, you make bread. A doctor, you heal people. But what if you're, say, a middle manager who oversees a human resources team at an insurance underwriting company? All of a sudden, trying to explain your actual tangible contribution, yeah, it gets a lot harder. Okay, a huge piece of this puzzle is just this massive shift that's happened in our economy. 100 years ago, most people made things, tangible stuff. Today, nearly 80% of us are in the service sector. And let's be honest, that's a super vague term for a reason. It covers everything from the barista making your coffee to a CEO making billion-dollar deals. It's this whole world built on administration and coordination, and, well, it's the perfect breeding ground for meaningless work. And this is where it gets really weird. I mean, Basic Economics 101 tells us the free market is supposed to be efficient, right? It should just weed out the useless stuff. Any company wasting money on pointless jobs should go broke. But that's clearly not what's happening. So what is going on here? Well, to find the answer, we have to look in a place you would never, ever expect. So to understand this very modern, very capitalist problem, we're going to take a trip back in time. And no, not to Silicon Valley in the 90s. We're going to the Soviet Union. Yeah, I know, it sounds absolutely nuts. But just stick with me here, because the similarities are, frankly, mind-blowing. Okay, check this out, because this is what's so wild. You have two systems that are supposed to be polar opposites, right? But look how they act. In the Soviet Union, the big thing was full employment. So you had this thing called worker hoarding. Managers would just hire as many people as they could, not because they needed them, but just to look important. Now, let's jump to today. We're obsessed with the 40-hour work week, even if there's only 10 hours of actual work to do. We've got this whole performative work culture on LinkedIn, where everyone's humbled and honored to announce they're working on some totally meaningless project. And yep, we have managers who bloat their teams, not for results, but to expand their own little empire. The ideology is totally different, but that bureaucratic impulse, it's almost identical. It's uncanny. So the big question is, how do we even begin to categorize these kinds of jobs? Well, luckily for us, an anthropologist named David Graeber came up with a brilliant framework. He basically identified 5 distinct types of pointless work, and he gave them a, let's say, a very blunt name. He called them bull jobs. Let's break them down one by one. All right, first on the list, we've got the flunkies. You can think of these jobs as basically being human status symbols. Their main purpose is just to be there, to make their boss or the whole organization look and feel more important. You've definitely seen these. Think about a doorman at some fancy building that already has a perfectly good keycard system, or a personal assistant whose whole job is scheduling meetings, something an app could do in like 5 seconds. The point isn't about getting things done efficiently. Nope. It's all about projecting an aura of importance for the person they work for. Okay, next up we have the duct tapers. And the name is perfect, really. These are the people whose entire job is to slap a piece of tape on a problem that, well, it just shouldn't exist in the first place. They're a walking, talking, temporary fix for a permanent and usually ignored flaw in the organization. Yeah, Graeber tells this amazing story about a person whose entire job was to secretly go in and fix the spreadsheets of a so-called star performer who is actually, terrible at his job. So this duct taper was creating real value, for sure. but only because the company refused to admit they had a bigger problem. Number 3, the box tickers. This one is all about appearances. It's pure performance. These jobs exist for one reason and one reason only. So a company can claim it's doing something that it's not actually doing. We care about culture, we're very innovative, that kind of thing. And here's the key. The actual output of these jobs is almost always completely ignored. You know that glossy internal company newspaper that lands on your desk, filled with smiling executives? Yeah, nobody reads that. But it exists so the company can tick the internal communications box. It is pure theater. It's all about looking like you're doing something instead of, actually doing it. Okay, now we're getting into what you might call the more demonic categories. Meet the goons. These are jobs that often have a genuinely negative or at least aggressive character. They exist purely because other people employ them. It's an arms race. I mean, this quote just says it all, doesn't it? Apple's suing Samsung over a rectangle with rounded corners. Think about the massive armies of corporate lawyers, lobbyists, and PR people who exist only for battles like this. Are they making better phones for you and me? Of course not. They exist purely in this adversarial, zero-sum game, creating absolutely no real value for society. And finally, we arrive at what many people think is the absolute worst of the worst, the task masters. These are the people whose main job is to assign work to others. Often they're just supervising people who don't need supervising. Or even worse, they're actively creating more pointless work for everybody else. Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. These are the managers who justify their own existence by calling endless meetings, or by creating those strategic vision documents that literally achieve nothing, but pull everyone away from the real, meaningful work they could have been doing. A lot of the time, they're just flunkies for the executives above them, who are then supervising other pointless jobs below them. It's a whole ecosystem. Okay, so there are the 5 categories: flunkies, duct tapers, box tickers, goons, and taskmasters. But this just brings us right back to that huge nagging question. If our whole system is supposed to be about profit and efficiency, why on earth does it keep creating and paying for these jobs? Well, turns out there are a couple of really big reasons. A huge driver is something we can call the cycle of bureaucracy, and it's a monster that feeds itself. It works like this. Step 1, a new super complex regulation gets created. Step 2, companies have to hire entire teams of people just to figure out how to comply with it. Step 3, those same companies then hire a bunch of lobbyists to try and change the regulation, which usually just makes it even more complicated. And boom, the cycle repeats, spinning off more and more administrative jobs every single time. And this isn't just an external problem. It grows inside companies too. And this brings us right back to that Soviet parallel we talked about. See, in most big companies, a manager's power, and a lot of times their salary, isn't linked to how efficient their team is. It's linked to how big their team is. So the real incentive isn't to be lean and effective. The incentive is to build your own little feudal empire, even if that empire produces absolutely nothing of value. I know. This all sounds pretty bleak, doesn't it? So, the million-dollar question, is there any escape? Is there anything we can actually do about this, either as a whole society or just as individuals who feel trapped in the machine? Well, on a huge societal level, the fix would probably require a massive cultural shift. Like, what if we just stopped worshiping the 40-hour workweek? What if we started valuing what people produce, not how many hours they sit at a desk? But that's a big ask. So for us, as individuals, the options are a bit more, shall we say, grounded. You can try to find meaning outside of your 9 to 5, pour your energy into a side hustle or passion project. You could learn to play the corporate game, just lean in and embrace the total absurdity of it all. Or let's be real, for a lot of people, the only option is to just suck it up and find a way to make peace with it. So I'm going to leave you with one final thought, a question for you to really chew on. If you woke up tomorrow and your job and every single job just like it simply vanish from the planet, would anyone even notice? Would the world be a demonstrably worse place? The answer to that question, well, it might just tell you everything you need to know.